I wake up and count my blessings. No more worries, no more stressing. With every loss there comes a lesson. Lord, all I'm asking is protection. I wake up and count my blessings.
Greetings, massive. Translation, hello everyone, and welcome to Conversations with me, a random nobody. Today's episode is pretty special to me because while I was listening to the audio and doing my editing, I realized how giddy I sounded. I sounded as if I was a 15-year-old girl or boy meeting their favorite celebrity for the first time. I giggled a lot. I was glued onto every word that came out of my guest's mouth. And it wasn't until a couple days after that I realized why I was acting that way. And I'm going to share my little epiphany at the end of the episode. But for right now, guys, I just want to introduce you to who I'll be having my conversation with today, Miss Claudia Perry. And among other things, Claudia is a complete genius in my book. She's a former pop music critic turned sports copy editor turned paralegal. She's an alumna of MIT and is exceptional when it comes to writing. She's worked for the Pulitzer Prize winning Star Ledger, also the Houston Post, Richmond Times, and has even served on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominating committee for 17 years. And to top it all off, you guys, she's a Jeopardy champion. I mean, to say she wears a lot of hats, that's pretty much an understatement. And that has something to do with my epiphany. But like I said, I'll let you guys know that at the end. But anyway, here's our conversation. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. And I apologize in advance for my giddiness. Enjoy, guys. So to all my listeners, I'd like to introduce you to Miss Claudia Perry. Claudia, welcome to Conversations with me, a random nobody.
Oh, absolutely delighted. And you are not a nobody. You are clearly somebody.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, I just want to get right into this conversation because I am so interested in just learning more about you. I saw you for the first time. I was actually finished up watching Wheel of Fortune and I left the TV on because Jeopardy comes on right after that. And I'm not really into Jeopardy, no offense, but I left it on and I was scrolling on my phone. And as I was listening to the TV and scrolling on my phone simultaneously, I heard a voice. And as soon as I heard the voice, I looked up and then I saw your face and I was like, this lady is so cool. And you're welcome. Just the way that you were answering the questions and your charisma, I was really enthralled. And after that, I got on Google, I Googled your name, I tried to find you everywhere. And I was only able to find you on Twitter. And I'm not big on Twitter. So, so I found you and I was like, oh my God, I need to reach out. But I didn't want to, at first, I wanted to, build up that courage and figure out how I was going to approach you and everything. So has this ever happened to you before where you randomly receive a message from someone saying how awesome you are and they want to have a conversation with you?
Actually, no.
That's so surprising.
The closest I guess you could come was there was a big trivia event earlier this year. It was second weekend in March called Geek Bowl.
Oh, okay.
And maybe 1,000, 1,500 people playing in teams for this sort of massive trivia event. And so what was kind of fun for me was there are some Jeopardy people, sort of in that cohort that I'm friendly with, but I'd never met any of them. And so it was kind of interesting because I would just be wandering around, going to the bathroom, whatever. And then, all these people would come to me, it's like, oh my God, it's Claudia Perry. And I can safely say that is probably the only place where something like that would have happened. Because my first games were on in 1997. So if they hadn't re-aired the Masters tournament, I think, a lot of people I used to get recognized on the street. That doesn't happen quite so much anymore, which is, sometimes, you need a little ego boost. So a little disappointed not happening quite so much, but, hey, I can live.
Okay, well, here is the ego boost because I am just like your number one fan right now. So do you think that people not recognizing you may have something to do with your hair because it's different now?
I think it's that. It could be that. It's also because I've moved around a lot. I've been in the Chicago area now for, in fact, this month it's 10 years even. And so, having moved so much, I mean, journalism is almost like, being a military person because you're always kind of looking for like the next best opportunity. So, went from Cambridge, Mass, where I was working for a newspaper while I was in college, to Jacksonville, Florida, Richmond, Virginia, to Houston, Texas, to San Jose, California, to New Jersey.
Wow.
And New Jersey was my last newspaper gig. I got out right around the time that newspapers started running out of money and not behaving the way they should. I kind of just decided to move to Chicago because I'd always wanted to live here. And I figured if I was going to be looking for jobs cold, I may as well be somewhere I actually wanted to be.
Okay.
And I do love Chicago. I do indeed. I mean, I live in Evanston, which is, sort of slightly north of the city, but Chicago is my jam.
Okay, that's good. So the coldness of Chicago wasn't a deterrent?
Nope.
Okay.
I love cold weather.
Oh.
Love it.
Okay.
When I was in Houston, as much fun as I had, because that was probably one of my best professional experiences, the weather was the worst.
Mm.
Yeah, I have friends still in Texas, and my heart goes out to them because obviously it's a kind of a hot mess down there with COVID and everything. I like it here. I like the winter. I mean, even being on a subway platform when it's 8 degrees out, I'm good.
Oh my goodness, I could not imagine. So me reaching out did not creep you out at all?
No, because usually, the ones that creep me out are like guys.
Okay.
That are like, I want to talk to you. I was like, okay. Guess what? I don't want to talk to you. I don't know who you are. I don't know where you've come from. I don't know you from the standpoint that maybe someone who thought that, I would be interested in talking to you. But if I have never seen your name before, no. Did a lot of blocking.
Okay.
I got the weirdest one was getting this phone message from somebody who, kept saying things like, oh, well, I'm in Greensboro. I said, yeah, that's great. I don't know anybody in Greensboro. And it's like, oh, and I have an apartment in Chicago and I'm not there right now. I was like, okay, fine. So I said, all right, something, I don't know who you are. This is weirding me out. You're getting blocked. God bless.
Okay, well, I don't feel that creepy anymore then.
No, not even close. I mean, you explained what you were doing, and I thought it was kind of cool. And, one of the great things about Facebook is I have that professional page, but my, timeline where I, hang out with my friends and say saucy stuff, the general public can't see that.
Oh, okay.
So the professional page is good because it's kind of like a flypaper for, the people, if it's somebody I want to talk to, then I can take a look at what they've sent me, and I'll be like, okay, yeah, I'll talk to them. And then if it's somebody creepy, or my favorite was I went to high school with you. I was like, okay, yeah. And guess what? I barely remember you.
So were people trying to reach out because they knew you were a champion on Jeopardy? Were they trying to get some money, or what? Why do you think they were trying to reach out?
Well, I think it's because they saw me on Jeopardy, and at one point they were like, oh, you've got to join the high school Facebook reunion group. I was like, oh, no, I don't. I mean, I think, the people that I'm in touch with from high school, I am in touch with.
Right. So
and that does not mean every sort of rando, who's like, we're putting together a reunion. Well, that's very nice. Not happening. So no, it is mostly Jeopardy related, and the fact that tournament re-aired kind of brought some people out. Somebody was like, say hello to your sister, and I was like, yeah, I'll say hello to my sister. Fine. Great. Thanks for checking in.
Right. Okay. So I'd actually like to start our conversation talking about your experience on Jeopardy. Now, I've heard 3 different numbers, 4 times, 4.5 times, and 5 times. How many times were you actually on the show?
Okay. My first championship run was in 1997, and it was kind of a little bit of a weird one because I was on the show and I finished second, but there was a technical problem. They actually stopped tape, which they never do. Yeah, it's like they take 5 shows a day. They take a break between the third and the fourth show for dinner.
Okay.
The commissary has really good food. So there was a problem with my signaling device because I was the only person ringing in and my podium was not registering that. And so they stopped tape, sent us to dinner prematurely because I was in the middle of the third game. And, after that, I lost. I won a thermal paper fax machine because this was back when Jeopardy was not giving money to the runners up. It would be like weird stuff or trips. Well, after that show, I got a call from one of the contestant coordinators. And he said, hey, listen, we want to bring you back because we think you are a better player. And, that game was just kind of a hot mess. So can you, we'll pay for you to come back. And at that point I was in San Jose. So them paying for me to come back basically was airfare. I had to take care of everything else. Because, people want to get on Jeopardy. Jeopardy doesn't have to pay you to come. People will crawl through broken glass to get on the show, So anyway, they paid my airfare down. I played again. I won 3 straight games.
Wow.
And I actually beat a woman who was talking about how it was her mother's dying wish to see her daughter on Jeopardy. And you don't sit in the green room and say stuff like that.
Right.
Kind of like, she won her second game and they called me. And I turned to the rest of the people in the row and I said, don't worry about it. She's going down.
Yeah.
And she did. And she lost. She was an English teacher at a community college, and she lost on a Final Jeopardy question that was about best-selling authors. It was practically in neon lights, but the answer was lawyer turned author, Mississippi, ding, ding, ding. Got to be John Grisham, right? Okay. Yeah. Well, she put down Scott Turow.
Uh-oh.
Oh, girl.
So you immediately knew that was the wrong answer.
I absolutely knew that she had the wrong answer, and I knew I had the right one.
Okay.
So then it was off the races. I win the 3 games, and for whatever reason, because I taped the last 3 games of that day's taping. Jeopardy occasionally takes production hiatus. So I went up to Glenn because I was going to have to come back in 10 days to finish this out. I said to him, okay, yeah, you paid for my airfare to get down here to do this. Any chance you're going to spring for my airfare coming back? And they were like, no.
Uh-oh.
We have $33,000 of our money. We are not paying for you to come back. So I came back. I won my 4th game, and there were a couple of instances in that game where I ran categories. I was just like, you go from top to bottom, and you just right. I did it for Musical Bills and Billies, and there was another one. I can't remember what it was. But so I lost my 5th game. And if you talk to anybody who's ever been on Jeopardy and lost, they are still probably replaying their games in their head.
Oh, my goodness.
Doesn't matter how long ago you were on. And in my case, it was like if I had bet 0, even though I got the answer wrong, I would have still been a 5-day champion. I was a 4-day champion. Obviously, if I'd been a 5-day champion, this was back when that was the limit, I would have gotten a car.
Okay.
And I would have also been eligible for a bunch of other tournaments that I did not participate in. I kind of was like, okay, I think I did pretty good. First time around, total was like $45,000. And this is before they doubled the prize money. So, I said, maybe I got a shot at Tournament of Champions for this year. I made it.
Wow.
And so I won. I think I won my quarterfinal, which means I didn't have to worry about the wild card thing. And then I went into the semifinals. I lost in the semis, but that was okay because you got money for that too. So it was like, all right, cool. Well, I can do with this. And I was like, all right, Tournament of Champions, but light it off. Okay, that was fantastic. Met some cool people. Oh man, but I guess this is probably me the last time I'm going to be on.
That sounds so interesting.
Well, the best part about it was I really hated my job in San Jose. I like partnered on the music beat with a moron. It turned out, I found out later he was making more money than I was, and I had more experience. But that was toothpaste out of the tube. I couldn't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the editors I worked with in Houston saw the shows. And he emailed me because he was in Newark now. And he says, give me a holler if you're ready to leave San Jose. And I said, where were you last year? So I went east. I got the job, and I blew out of San Jose and then went to Newark, and I worked for the Star Ledger for like 11 years. We won a Pulitzer there. So I came east, and since I grew up in DC, it was kind of nice to come back east. And, it was all right, but this was .com bubble #1, and housing was ridiculously expensive. I mean, I was in my late 30s, and all of the people at the paper who were in that age group, they were like living in houses with roommates. And I was just like, oh, good Lord, girl, I cannot. I didn't even have roommates in college. I mean,
right.
So, I'm not a roommate kind of girl. What kind of, I don't want to have to feel like I have to lock up my food in the fridge. Or
yeah.
You're going to bring your significant other over, and they're going to leave stuff all over the place. It's like, no, I don't think so.
Not happening.
Not happening. So I did some more music stuff, and then I did health and fitness beat for a while, which was kind of fun. But then decided, maybe I should do sports things. I mean, I love sports to death.
Okay.
And so I ended up taking the sports copy editor gig, which was, in terms of like my physical health and probably my mental well-being, was like probably one of the worst jobs I've ever had. I mean, Groupon was the worst job I ever had. Long story. My hours were like 5:30 to 1:30 in the morning, and I had Tuesdays and Wednesdays off.
Wow.
So, social life, what?
Uh-huh.
I didn't know if I'm in social life. But one evening when I was there, I don't know how this happened, because this was like 2002. So we're not talking about like deep dish social media or whatever, but they found me. And I got a call when I was at work asking me if I wanted to be in the $1 Million Masters tournament. I was like,
of course,
right? That's how I ended up in the tournament. And I was a little bummed because at that point I was in Jersey. The tournament was at Radio City Music Hall, and they did put us up at the Waldorf, which was cool. But all these other friends of mine, people who in the tournament who've since become like really good friends, they were all coming from like all over the country. And in one case, internationally, they all got like business class flight, the hot nuts, the whole bit. And I'm like, I took a limo through the Holland Tunnel.
You were already there, Claudia.
No, I know, but I wanted a fancy business class flight. I mean, I would have flown from LaGuardia to Newark just to get a business class thing, So I take the limo, get to the Waldorf, make a note that on the menu a peanut butter and jelly sandwich is $12.50. This was back in 2002, which you got to realize that was just brutal. So I want to say the first night that I was there, I decided to go to the concierge and get a ticket to see the producers, because the producers was like the big hot thing. So I did that because it was like, one thing that sometimes comes up when people talk to you about the show, they were like, there are two things. I heard one where somebody says, do you get the questions in advance? And I was like, no.
Okay.
And second of all, did you study?
And
in my case, no, because I was raised in a household of books and like experiences. I mean, lived in Africa twice when I was a kid, because my dad did work for the Agency for International Development, and second time that was in Malawi. Second time we were in Ethiopia, and he was working for the UN. So we were a family that read. I mean, I used to, when I went to the library when I was a kid, they gave you, like the kiddie library card. And this is back, when the librarian would type it up. And you couldn't take out adult books with the kiddie library card. Okay. And, I was a sports fanatic. There were other things I wanted to read. So my parents were getting books for me. Like, no, I want to read about the Mets run of the '69 World Series. I want to do this. I want to do that. And so they encouraged all of my reading.
Wow.
I was never told, you can't read that, or like, we don't want you to do that. My mother loved opera, so I'm one of the few Jeopardy contestants that actually was hoping for an opera category.
Okay.
My dad was into jazz. In fact, one night he took me to go see Wynton Marsalis back when Bradford was still in the group.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, yeah, okay, whatever, it's a free show. And I just kind of I didn't go out of my way to clean myself up. I mean, I wasn't looking as though I'd slept in the dumpster, but didn't exactly put in a lot of effort. And I'm convinced to this day I could have been a Marsalis if I had actually upped my game.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, Dad knew a bunch of jazz cats, and one of the guys that was on that show was a friend of his, who was a saxophone player who worked at the post office. So I got introduced to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was younger, and to this day, I still love music, and I love all kinds of music, because growing up in a household with opera, jazz, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
My sister liked rock. My father used to finger wag her about the Rolling Stones, because he was like, really, you do realize they were ripping off our people.
Mm-hmm.
So, my tastes were a little more bizarre, glam rock, whatever. And so with that interest, that was something I knew I always wanted to do. And when I was in college, somebody approached me when I was allegedly working on a master's, and that's when I got my first music writing job. Met a bunch of people. Somewhere there in my house, there was a picture of me and Bono with carnations in our teeth and my arms around each other.
Wow.
I think he's lying about his age, because we're exactly the same age. And I think he's put his down a year. But so that's how I got in everything, and sort of, kept reading,
Mm-hmm.
kept paying attention. In fact, somebody asked me, what do you think the best way to prepare for the show is? And I said, just pay attention. Read the newspaper, keep an eye out for what's going on where. I know who won, has won Pulitzers for this, that, and the other. And it came up in the Decades tournament that I needed to know that. And I actually got Final Jeopardy correct, but I didn't have enough money. I doubled my score, but the person who was in the lead was far enough away that didn't help.
It's funny that you went into how you prepare for the show, because I was actually going to ask that question, because when I do watch Jeopardy, it's sporadic. I'm not a huge fan, because I just never feel like I'm smart enough. I'm not calling myself dumb or anything, but I mean, when I read those answers, by the time I comprehend what the answer is saying, the contestant has already rang in, said the answer, and is on to the next one. So when you say that, you didn't study, you didn't get the questions beforehand, I was going to actually ask that, because I'm just like, how do you prepare? But in your case, you said you just life experiences, you read a lot.
Now, the first time I was on, I did buy an almanac, because, this was 97. So we're not talking internet. We're not, talking being able to go online and look up stuff. But the almanac was very helpful, because it has, information about countries, information about presidents, information about, periodic table of elements, whatever. So I did look through that, because I knew there were certain things I didn't know.
Okay.
And as one of my friends who was on the show said, it isn't what you know, it's how fast you can recall it.
Okay.
And in most of the cases, in fact, my quarterfinal game in the $1 Million Masters tournament, I was playing against a guy that I consider the best Jeopardy player ever. I mean, Ken's great. I mean, nothing against Ken, but Brad Rutter is the bomb.
Oh, wow.
Brad has destroyed, but Brad is good. And he's still, it's so funny. All of us were talking after the Go tournament, and we were like, nothing really changed. Brad still has the most money. He's won $4 million.
Wow.
Ken has the longest streak of 73 games, and then James is James. James. Well, anyway, we don't want to get into James.
Wow.
He's a little creepy.
Okay. Oh, gotcha.
So that's how I sort of got ready. And in some cases, it can just be the most random thing that you can recall it. For example, Final Jeopardy in the quarterfinal match. A random fact was about the zinc manufacturers complaining about a congressman suggesting to eliminate something. Well, I was a big fan of The West Wing. And there was an episode where Sam, Rob Lowe's character, was getting his knickers in a twist because somebody wanted to eliminate the penny.
Mm.
And I learned from the dialogue in that show that pennies are 99% zinc. They're only clad in copper.
Oh, okay.
And so when I saw that Final Jeopardy, I was like, penny.
Wow. So that random bit of information came through for you.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. And it won the first time. I remember in one of my games, I just couldn't, for whatever reason, I was like leader of the pack. I know the song. Which girl group did that? Oh my gosh. It's not the Ronettes. It's not the, and then like, that was a daily double and time is running down.
Right.
And I finally pull it out, Shangri-La's. And it was like, I just did like one of these, oh, booyah, nailed that. So
I remember seeing that. I think Alex Trebek said that you pull that answer out of thin air.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how a lot of us are. Because like,
okay.
I was playing bar trivia until trivia pretty much moved online with a group of people, and all of us have been on Jeopardy.
Mm-hmm.
The most unnerving thing, though, was the two of the people said to me, "Oh, I watched you when I was a kid." I was like, "Oh my God." Oh, but I mean, it's sweet, but it was just like, "Oh man, do you really need to remind me?"
Right.
So, but anyway, so that's how you get ready. And then there's one other key thing a lot of people don't know when they're watching. Alex finishes reading the question, and then there's a row of lights that go on either side of the board.
Mm-hmm.
If you ring in before the lights go on, you're locked out for half a second.
Oh, okay.
And if you're playing, at the level we were at the $1 Million Masters, that's enough. Because Brad is fast. I mean, he wasn't as fast then as he is now, but there were things where it was just like, man, I just had to get in first.
Okay.
And then there were a couple of things where it was just like nobody else knew them. So those are the kind I always love.
Yeah. So if you could choose to be on any, because I know that you were on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire as well as
that did not go well.
I saw that, and I didn't want to elaborate if you didn't want to.
Well, no. We were I had a fellow Jeopardy champion I brought along as my, plus one. You used to phone a friend, but then it was like you bring somebody with you who's like your extra expert. And we agreed that the question I went out on wasn't really about knowledge. It was about the joke.
Right.
Talking about goofy names for like made up drinks.
Right. Remember.
That has nothing to do with your sort of knowledge base. And I just, I will admit, I think I was so overwhelmed by how stupid the question was. I didn't sort of do what you would normally do in that situation, which is to read it over, a few times because, unlike Jeopardy, Millionaire is not timed.
Mm-hmm.
So, but Millionaire is off the air. I think they've done they did a celebrity version a little while ago, but they've gotten out of that business.
Right.
And then I was on 500 Questions, which was, I can basically say, is a show that makes little or no sense and is impossible to win unless you are already in like the winner's podium. It's really hard to win. Off.
Okay, but they said that that show houses like some of the smartest people in the country, correct?
Yeah, definitely. Okay. These are all people like the guy who won the season 2 of 500 Questions. We're friends on Facebook and we all keep in touch. There's a whole like community of Jeopardy Facebook groups devoted for anything from like traveling, West Wing fans.
Okay.
And so it's like it's this community, and it also overlaps with trivia that doesn't have anything to do with Jeopardy.
Gotcha.
In fact, like last night, my team and a couple of ringers, we were on a Zoom answering this 101 question monthly quiz put together by a guy who runs the Trivia Hall of Fame.
Wow.
And some of those questions were brutal. I didn't know that, the alternate names for the Korean War, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Then they asked a question saying that if Prince William becomes king, what William would he be? The first William, the second William, the third William, the fourth. Turns out he was winning the fifth. He gets the fourth. So, but it wasn't like a closest to the pin deal. You had to get 5. and the fact that the British intelligence service hacked Al-Qaeda's magazine, and they replaced the instructions for making a bomb with instructions to make what? We decided it was chocolate chip cookies, but it actually turned out to be cupcakes.
Oh my gosh, so close.
Yes. But also, I mean, face it, that's not anything, playing pub trivia and like continue to be interested in stuff, was made it easy for me to answer some of those things. But, we've got question writers among our cohort who just are brutal. I play in a Monday night online game run by these two brothers called Gentleman Octopus, and some of their stuff is just like, we're all groaning because in some cases it's like, oh gosh, I should have known that, but the way that question was worded, you were being sneaky. And then I'm in another online trivia called Learned League. It's like 7,000 of us.
Oh,
mostly
wow.
like Brad is in there, Ken is in there, a lot of other hotshot.
Okay.
And I haven't even made it to the top rundle. I'm like in B, and I have a sneak suspicion the way things are going this season, I'm probably going to be back down in C for next season. Things have not been going well. That's probably the hardest. I mean, some stuff in there is harder than Jeopardy.
Okay. Wow.
That is like, oh my gosh.
So
anyway, I'm wandering off. What else do you want to know?
No, you're fine. You're fine. I was going to say your sister, you said earlier, was a contestant on Jeopardy as well, right?
Yes.
So is it safe to assume that your entire family is just full of geniuses?
I don't know. One of the things that I know my mother thought this was really important. Because her father always says, no matter where you go, no matter who you are, you're always going to be a pork and beaner. So it was like, don't get above your raisin. My parents, like I said, they loved to read. They were curious about a bunch of stuff. And so that's who we were. At one point, somebody actually asked my mother if she wanted to get my sister and I IQ tested. And she said no. My parents basically told us what we were doing in school wasn't the point. Grades were a means to an end. And they said, we will pay for you to go to college anywhere where you can get in. Because, my mom was teaching, my dad was working for the Census Bureau, and what they had made a decision to do was basically to bank pretty much all of my mother's salary.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So my sister and I were very lucky. She got to go to Brandeis. I got to go to MIT. And, we didn't, unlike a lot of kids now, it's like we didn't graduate with student debt. We didn't.
Yeah.
So, we, like I said, that was just one of those things where, it was important to them. And in fact, my sister and I used to joke that we didn't know that you didn't have to go to college after you left high school.
Wow.
It was a given. Your high school's over, you're going to college.
Yeah.
So
it's what happens.
So that's kind of, I was very blessed to have parents that were proactive and, encouraged our interests, no matter how strange. It's sad to me when I see kids where that's not happening, and knowing that there's particularly Black kids that are not getting that kind of support.
Yes.
It makes me sad. And I'm thinking now, granted, this may not necessarily be the right time to do it, in terms of maybe that I should be a little more proactive about mentoring and talking to kids.
That sounds like that would be really good. I think you have a lot to offer. And I was going to ask Ashley about your college experience and what you did in college to prepare for your, success in the future. But it sounds like your parents really played a big part in your life and how you prepared throughout college. And, because
not only that, I mean, they didn't have a cow when I decided to major in art and design. But what happened while I was in college was I fell in love with journalism.
Okay.
And there was one of my teachers who was kind of like a mentor, who had been the science editor at Newsweek, and he taught a class in politics and media. And so I went to him because I was having a blast working on the school papers. Some of my grades reflected that. I really still don't know anything about electricity and magnetism. I got a D in that part of physics. But,
no way. I get a D.
What can I say? So I went to him and I said, oh gosh, Ed, I'm really, really convinced that journalism is my jam. But, shouldn't I transfer from MIT to, someplace that's better? And it was like a journalism school, like Northeastern or Boston University. And he looked at me and he said, kid, when I was at Newsweek, if I had a choice between hiring somebody who majored in journalism or a liberal arts major who could write, I would hire the liberal arts major every time. He says,
wow.
If it takes you 4 years to figure out how to do journalism, he goes, you really are probably not going to be of much use to any editor.
That's an interesting way to look at that.
Well, no, and the thing is, what you have with a more well-rounded education, as opposed to learning about whether it's history
right.
or how to write a news story, which to me, once you've done it once, it kind of falls into place.
It flows, okay.
Right. It was that if you have a liberal arts background, you have kind of a broad education, it puts you in a position where you can talk to all kinds of people. Because, one of the things, for example, when I was in Houston, I wrote about country music.
Right. I saw that. And
I needed to be able to make rednecks comfortable.
With you being in their quote unquote environment. Okay.
Right. And the point being, what it meant was I needed to not only know country music history, I needed to know NASCAR, actually. Very early, obviously well before Bubba. But so, I had a favorite NASCAR driver, and it wasn't like an obvious one. It was like Bill Elliott, whose son is actually now racing. And, the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo used to have country concerts every year, and I had to review them. And so one of the things I did was I hung out with some of the cowboys. Sometimes I would go down to sound check and I would actually talk to the artists. And by that point, I had been doing this long enough where, I was getting greeted by name, by people like Brooks and Dunn and whatever, saw Garth Brooks, play for 63,000 people, and, just was never seen anything quite like that before. Selena, I still have a real place in my heart for a bunch of Spanish language music.
Okay.
Among my favorites are this politically active, they are defunct now. There was a group from Puerto Rico called Calle 13, as in 13th Street. And they were politically active. The guys rapped in Spanish. They also wrote some of these amazing songs. They also collaborated with Ruben Blades, who's obviously an activist and so from Panama, was, head of the tourism board or whatever. So that was also a kind of part of what I was doing. So, there was country, there was a lot of Spanish language stuff, and I was able, thanks to education and curiosity, I could move among those places and actually fit in reasonably well.
Wow.
So, and I still like some country music, probably mostly not what's on the radio. Music made by, in some cases, people that I've gotten to know well enough that I might even consider them friends.
Okay.
So, and even though I'm not writing about music now, I'm still kind of involved in terms of checking in on my friends, drinking massive quantities of bourbon when certain things come to town. So anyway, that aspect of my life has never really gone away, even though I'm not on the nominating committee anymore. I'm still curious about new music, and, a lot of people in my age group just aren't. I feel sort of sad for them. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on now.
Yes, I agree.
Got Kendrick, and I will admit that even though he's a bit of a cheese ball, I like Drake. I'm not proud.
What did you think of Cardi B and Meg the Stallion's WAP? Have you listened?
I will admit, and you can just finger wag me to death, I haven't heard it.
Okay.
I will seek that out, because I've been hearing about it, and it sounds like it's really cool. So I'm gonna have to definitely check that out.
Okay. Now, I read an article about you. You visited an English class at Fletcher. I think it was back.
That was back when I was in Jacksonville.
Okay. And so you had just written an edit about a Journey concert. Where I remember that one. Yeah.
You said the I was not a fan.
Listen, You said the lead singer sounded like Donald Duck on
Duck
what?
sucking helium.
Helium.
Yes.
I read that and I was like, oh, no, she didn't. So
Oh, yeah, I did.
the class itself was not too pleased about that. And people actually wrote your editor complaining about what you said, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Not related to the Journey review, but I got death threats for one review. I can't remember what that was, but anyway, no, I mean, the thing about being a critic is you have to look at what's going on in context and then render an opinion.
Okay.
You're not there as a stenographer, because then if that was the case, you wouldn't write a review. You would just list the set list and then go on with the day.
Right.
No. And one of the things I am doing with Journey is I'm placing them in the context of all of the music that I know about and all of the things that I've experienced. And as far as I was concerned, they were wanting. Even with Don't Stop Believin', Being, and The Sopranos, I was like, still don't like them.
Did you like that song at least?
No.
What? Nope. I was just singing it the other day.
No, it's one of those songs that I feel like it's worn out its welcome.
Okay, that's understandable.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel that way about We Are the Champions, but
okay.
Yeah, because particularly when my sports teams are winning, I'm happy to have them sing "We Are the Champions." It's all good. But no, but one of the things to me that was important was to go to Fletcher and talk to the kids about it.
Mm-hmm.
And, when I was in Jersey, I actually went to a high school and I was talking to these kids and I said, somebody was like, they were asking me about sports because at that point I was on the sports copy desk. And I said, okay, I want to do a little exercise with you. How many of you play sports? A certain number of hands went up. I said, okay. How many of you think you're going to play pro ball? All of their hands went up. I said, let me introduce you to what I call the 1%.
Mm-hmm.
I said, of all athletes in high school, only 1% get college scholarships.
Yep.
And I said, in some cases, like if you play baseball or some like non-revenue sport, it's not a full scholarship. They will pay for part of your tuition, but then your room and board, whatever, all that's up to somebody. And I said, and of the college ball players, so I said, using, it doesn't matter the sport really.
Right.
Only 1% of them play in the pros. Mm-hmm. And the pros in this case includes Israel, Cyprus, Korea,
right.
Turkey. We're not talking, you're not going to be in the NBA. The majority of that 1% is not playing primetime.
Right.
Charles Barkley is not talking about you.
Yeah.
So I said, if you still want to be around sports, try this. Get your MBA and be an agent.
Mm-hmm.
Agents outlast all of the players.
Right.
And they make 10 to 15% of every dime they make. In some cases, it's not that much. Like, for example, the average NFL player, they only play for 3.5 years, and most of them don't save a dime. And then, of course, you have the other aspects of being in the NFL, which one of my friends who we worked together in San Jose, he's now a college professor, and we've decided that they need to rename the NFL the Racist Death Factory.
Oh, wow.
Well, I mean, the majority of the people are people of color.
Yeah.
And I just read this article, it was in the New York Times, and it just infuriated me. Apparently, they were doing the settlement with the people who have, CTE and all of the brain issues and mood problems. They use a different scale to grade the Black people's problem.
What?
And it makes it harder for them to get compensation.
Are you serious?
Dead serious.
Oh my goodness. That is disgusting.
Yeah. So, this to me qualifies under the heading, whether it's Jeopardy or not. If, you want to know stuff.
Right. Right.
And, don't rely on your Facebook friends. Don't rely on, some website that, is some whoever that don't know nothing.
Right.
You need to read. You need to get, I don't do this as much as I should, but, occasionally you need to read the enemy. Just because you want to have a better understanding of how they think, or in some cases that they're thinking at all or not. So no, to me, that's just, important. I mean, and I love sports, but at this point, I can't watch football.
In regards to the music side, when you were at Fletcher again, you gave the class a sample of a little known Irish group to listen to for them to critique, which turned out to be
U2.
U2. And it's like, you told them that day, you said, you're going to hear a lot more from them. So I want to know, how do you know what's going to be successful versus what's gonna flop? Like, how do you
Well,
know?
you don't always know.
Okay.
But in U2's case, when they first came to the States, it was like December 1980, they were playing a bar in Boston and they were the opening act.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Somebody from Ireland had gotten in touch with me because I heard the record. I said, it's good. And they said, oh, they're coming to Boston. You want to talk to them? I said, sure. And she goes, okay, well, let me check with some of the other writers and then we'll see what's going on with the interviews and whatever. So she calls me back and says, you're the only one that is interested. So why don't you do this? Why don't you go over to their motel? They're staying at Travelodge in Brookline. And just, take however much time you want. I'm in this room and it's like, guys in bands, they got piles of crap everywhere and it all smells bad because, they're in a van, they're boys, they don't, hygiene is just sort of an afterthought.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm in there and then I'm talking to Bono and the first thing he says to me goes, besides us, who do you think is going to be famous? And I was like, you arrogant little shit. That was what I was thinking. But and it was so funny when he asked the question, I was sort of flipping through, the bands that were kind of, in that same era, whether you're like Echo and the Bunnymen, Joy Division / New Order, Teardrop Explodes, Joseph K, the Postcards, all these English bands, because one of the advantages we had in Boston was there was this really cheesy airline called People Express, and you could fly to London for like $99 round trip.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of the college DJs would go over there and they would bring music back, which is why Boston was a place where U2 was huge because college radio was playing them.
Okay.
Or like the rest of the country caught up. And so I looked at him and said, I'm actually not really coming up with anything. But anyway, let's talk. They had, and I guess continue to have, they're still touring and still making records. They just have something.
That's so interesting. You have so much to give, like so much experience and knowledge to share with everyone. So I hope that everyone listening is taking it all in as much as I am. So before we wrap up, I just wanted to talk about your humor because you are hilarious to me. And you said earlier that it's just something that comes naturally. So when you were on Jeopardy, when I saw you on Jeopardy at first, I was like, there's so much more to her. I want to know more. I want to see more. And then when I saw you on 500 Questions, you had the audience cracking up. It was just...
I kept saying shit. That was part
Did
of
you?
It.
Oh my...
Yeah, I mean, I did it on Jeopardy and they believed it. And then when they cut together 500 Questions, all of my shits were... excised.
Are you serious?
Well, I mean, that's my kind of go-to word if I can't remember anything.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, it could be F-bombs, and I'm not really an F-bomb kind of person. Or actually, quite frankly, when I was working in newsrooms, I totally was. But it's kind of, that's just not something you lead with.
Okay. Right. Exactly.
So, but one of the things to me was kind of important about shows, in terms of like, when I was, whether it was Jeopardy, 500 Questions, whatever, I was so thrilled when I would see like Black families in the audience. And so when I was like walking up 500 Questions, there was this family, it was right in the front row, and I said, hey guys, how you doing? Remember, you got to pay attention in school, and guess what? There's other stuff you need to read that ain't in school. Keep busy on the reading thing, all right? Got it. So
nice.
And some little girl came up to me. She wasn't a Black kid, and she wanted me to sign something. And and she was like, blonde and kind of cute. And I'm sure that she was the kind of little girl where people were always telling her how pretty she was. And so, what did I write in an autograph? I said, "Get smart and stay smart."
Yeah, exactly.
It's important to me. It's like some of my humor comes from the fact that, I have this kind of vast and sort of unruly base of knowledge. And one of the things that we were talking about, and this is a sort of $1 Million Masters related, after we were done taping, there was a big party at Radio City. And, got my picture taken with Rockettes, and we also got like a bottle of Perrier Jouet and matching glasses and everything. But we kind of, as contestants, we were kind of like, we really don't want to hang around here. I mean, Brad had to, because he won the whole thing. So we called up the Waldorf and got them to put together this like enormous table so we could all like just sit and hang out and talk about stuff. And, you know, somebody said, you know, it's really great about being here is like you know, you can tell a joke, you don't have to explain it.
Okay.
And somebody else said, yeah, or you don't have to, like, people already know that you actually made a joke as opposed to sitting there like, what?
Right.
But the coolest thing about that, besides, you know, getting together people, I mean, I went to Finland and Australia thanks to my friend Leslie Shannon, who's now actually living in California. We're all there and we're like yucking it up, and, you know, they had to move this couple who was in the dining room so they could build this great table for us. So we're hanging out, and who should come wandering in with Brad? And he said, you know something? He goes, you guys were great.
Uh-huh.
You know, you guys were so much fun, and it was just really an honor and a pleasure to play with you all, and dinner's on me. So picked up the tab for the whole group, because this was like, you know, however many of us it was, I think it was like 16 plus some significant others and whatever. So, and then what he also did, he found out, you know, that this couple had to move so we could, you know, put together our little deal. He paid for their dinner too, which is why in my mind, Brad Rutter is the GOAT. He will, no one else, no one, I'm sorry, this just, they don't make them like that anymore.
Right.
So no, I mean, and that's sense of humor also just, you know, has a tendency to, I just have a tendency to try to look at things on the lighter side because, you know, I've had some health issues and, you know, I have Crohn's disease and that kind of sucked, but I made, you know, I remember, and I've had my knees replaced, and I remember, you know, going in to have surgery. I had my surgery at a hospital that treats like the Yankees and the Mets in New York. And I had just come back from Australia and New Zealand where I'd gone to visit Leslie. And so it turned out our anesthesiologist was from New Zealand. And so we started talking and making jokes about where men are men and sheep are scared. And, and so, you know, they do constant sedation with like an epidural for this. But the thing is, you don't remember anything.
Wow.
But by all accounts, and I was informed, I talked 15 to the dozen through the entire surgery.
Are you? Oh my goodness.
And so somebody said to me jokingly, oh, you do realize you now own a sheep farm in New Zealand. And I started laughing because I knew we had been talking about sheep and I knew they were pulling my leg. And, you know, my gastroenterologist when I was in New Jersey, he kind of didn't get my humor, but, you know, he learned. And when I had, I think it was colonoscopy number 10, and given what's just happened with Chadwick, I mean, people don't, you know, do it. Don't care how old you are, talk to somebody because this can sneak up on you and it can kill you.
Absolutely.
So please keep your colon happy.
Yes.
So I said, you know, gosh, I said, this is number 10. Do I get like a toaster oven? I mean, come on. So, you know, and then actually at one point when I'm like there and they're like, you know, hooking me up with the IV and get ready to sedate me, the guy says, oh, you're on Jeopardy. And I was like, yeah. He goes, what's Alex really like? And I'm there. I was like, you're getting ready to shove a tube up my butt. And you're right. What Alex is really like. Oh, well, you know, first of all, we don't spend that much time with him because game show rules from the Scandal days, you know, there was a lot of things that went on. So we don't really see him that much. By playing in tournaments, we actually had a little more contact with him because he would come into the green room and wish us all luck. And so, and of course, at this point, all of us are just like, you know, praying, you know, sacrificing chickens, whatever it takes. You know, so here I am like, what's Alex really like? I was like, you know, I'm wearing a gown, has my ass hanging out, and you know, you're about to put me to sleep, and you have to ask me this question now. So the humor to me was kind of essential, you know, to deal with my health concerns because I mean, nothing you can do about it really.
Right.
But you at least need to kind of go into it with the notion of like, okay, I'm going to do everything in my power to like beat this. But in the meantime, you know, you know, this is a disease of the bowels. You can just have so much fun with that.
Wow.
In a gross way. I mean, you know, you like, you know, I jokingly said at one point I wanted to call up my doctor after he'd done colonoscopy and tell him I found his wristwatch.
Oh my goodness.
I I didn't do it. I mean, it was just one of those things like, oh God, wouldn't that be the coolest?
It would be so funny though.
Absolutely.
All right, Claudia, well, before I let you go, I have 3 questions for you, honey.
Okay.
All right. So, number 1. Okay. An epistolary novel is written in the form of?
A letter.
Yes. Ah, okay.
Yeah, that's actually kind of like a Bible thing, because think about it. The epistles of Paul, he was writing letters to all of the new Christian churches. So epistolary.
I never even thought of it like that. See?
Yeah.
All right. I'm learning. All right. Now, over a mile deep and 25 million years old, it's the deepest and oldest lake on Earth.
Oh, okay. This one, I might have to do process of elimination. It could be Crater Lake, but I don't think it's Crater Lake. And
can I give you a hint?
Yeah, all right.
It starts with a B.
Oh, not Banff Lake.
No.
Oh my gosh. I know it's not Tahoe because obviously that doesn't start with a B. What is it?
Lake Baikal.
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 Where is it?
I have no idea, Claudia.
Okay, not to worry.
You're supposed to know this stuff.
And not all of it, you know.
Right.
I used to jokingly say I don't know everything, but I'm going to try to know where to look everything up.
Yes. All right, now the last question, which might be the hardest of them all, but okay. Not really. What does success look like to you?
Being able to look myself in the mirror at the end of the day and know that I've done the right thing.
Awesome. Well, Claudia, if my listeners wanted to get in touch with you, you know, if they're maybe going to be on Jeopardy or they need some advice on writing, how could they keep in touch with you or get in contact with you?
I would say look for me on LinkedIn.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming to have this conversation with me, a random nobody. I appreciate you and I wish you much continued success and good health and all of that good stuff.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Well, what say you? Was I giddy? I'll accept that, okay? Because like I said, I did have an epiphany and what I realized was I was so excited and delighted actually to have this conversation with Claudia because she looked like me. When I saw her on that TV screen, I didn't realize it then, but I realize it now that I felt a sense of pride watching her answer those questions confidently and being herself and, you know, telling the jokes that she told. I was proud, not only because she looked like me, but I feel like I kind of have some of her personality traits as when it comes to humor, not the intelligence aspect, unfortunately. But, you know, I'm the one in my group of friends that will normally tell a corny joke or, you know, not saying Claudia is corny, but, you know, I have that special sense of humor that not everyone gets. But I wasn't alone, guys. I wasn't alone because Maya Angelou, before she passed, this was actually in 95, she actually boycotted Jeopardy because of the lack of representation. She said that although Jeopardy used her name in some of the questions and categories, there was never anyone on there that looked like her. So that goes to show how important representation is. And even at the age of 39, it had an impact on me. Seeing another Black woman stand up in front of the world on Jeopardy and win all that money, well, for me, that was pretty momentous. So no matter who you are, do everything that you do with pride and dignity because you just never know who you're going to impact and how what you do will affect someone else. Well, I'm done, guys. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. Remember to follow me on Instagram. I'm Random Nobody Podcast. On Twitter, I am at Random Nobody with the number 1. And if you don't have either of those, just send me an email at randomnobodypodcast@gmail.com. So until next time, walk good. Translation, be safe.
Started from the bottom, look where we end up, on top like Pac, all eyes on us. Count my blessings, no more worries, no more stressing, no more stress. With every loss there comes a lesson. Lord, all I'm asking is protection. Count my blessings. I wake up and count my blessings.